All right, my friends, today we are talking to one of our favorite coaches, Tim Sledd, about blue belts. I asked him 5 questions about blue belts. Hope you enjoy the interview, and I hope you learned something. So here we go. Tim, do you have any requirements for a blue belt? And if you do, what are they?
Yes, I do have a minimum requirement list that I do, and then I do a rite of passage with all of the guys and girls that are getting ready to get promoted to blue belt. My system, I have a proprietary set of techniques that I require they know. What I mean by that is, I throughout my years of jiu-jitsu started boiling down what do I feel are the necessary fundamental building blocks for good jiu-jitsu, and those are the core techniques of small axe jiu-jitsu. And I require all of my students that are going to be a blue belt that they have to be able to perform those techniques on demand, and they also have to be able to teach those techniques without sort of notice that they're going to have to teach them. I believe in testing in some way, shape, or forms, but I don't use testing per se. But what I do is I give all the students the core techniques right around the time they're a 3-stripe or 4-stripe white belt. I give them a list of that and say, hey, guess what? You're pushing toward blue, so you need to get ready. You need to know these techniques inside out, upside down, and backwards. If they've been coming and participating in the curriculum, then they're going to know it. But I make sure that they polish up, that they work with training partners in the gym to get ready for that. Then on what I call a pre-test day, they come in, I call out the moves, they rep the moves as many times as they can rep the moves in the amount of time I give them, and then I'll direct them without them knowing what technique they're going to be given. I direct them to teach a technique to the class as if we're all first day white belts coming in, and it's been the course of performance in my gyms that all the black, brown, purple, and existing blue belts come to these pre-tests because it's a rite of passage. It's like a bond of brotherhood. It's usually about 4 hours long, so everybody's exhausted and remembers their pre-test and loves it and loved it and sees the value in it. So they come to this, but then they have to teach this group of their mentors how to do a technique, whether it's Americana or armbar from the guard or a sweep or how to attack the back to get the rear naked choke or something like that. They have to teach that as if we're all white belts first day. Because my program, I'm not looking to build blue belts, I'm looking to build black belts. So from the outset, they're seeing that there's more to this than just attendance.
Could you maybe give us 1 or 2 examples of what some of these techniques that you require on here that they be able to demonstrate?
Sure. I mean, it's not. There's nothing surprising on there. It's probably going to be shocking to people how few there are. I mean, there's a lot, but there's nothing shocking or surprising on the list. I've gone to different schools and seen, and this is a very common way to do it, that they have sort of, you need to know 2 guard passes, 3 sweeps, 4 submissions from cross-side, 2 submissions from mount, 3 submissions from back, et cetera, before you can get your belt, and then they leave it open for the students to find what they want there. That's a valid way and a very commonly used way for people to sort of set it up. Mine's different. I have a specific bent toward the fundamental techniques that you're going to use from white through black belt, and so for example, they definitely need to know every position and how to use good posture in that position, how to hold that position well. So I talk a lot about that in my classes, so they are familiar with hand placement, grip placement, pressure placement, all of these different components, posture breaking if you're on the bottom, And so they've got to know that and have to be able to explain that. But then, as far as like the techniques are concerned, it wouldn't surprise you that I expect them to know how to do an armbar from the mount, an Americana from the mount, cross collar choke from the mount, from close guard. And this is not exhaustive. I'm just giving you examples. They would need to know palm up, cross collar choke from guard, a palm up, palm down, collar choke from a guard, kimura, armbar from the guard, sweeps, some very basic sweeps from the guard. But I'm not looking for them just to know them. I'm looking for them to have a pretty refined level of knowledge of them and ability to perform them. So yeah, I don't have like, my blue belt requirements would not have, very many half guard sweeps. In fact, I don't even think there's a half guard sweep in my blue belt minimum requirement. They're more than welcome to know far beyond the minimal requirement, and they would know a lot more. But for the test or for the pre-test, it's gonna be the building blocks, basically what you would expect to know if you took a fundamental jiu-jitsu class for 18 months.
Tim, how important is it for a student to be able to defend their belt? And looking a little deeper into that, is it a legitimate promotion if you're promoting a purple belt who still occasionally gets tapped by blue belts?
Defending one's belt, it kind of depends on the student. If you've got a student who their point of jiu-jitsu is to be a competitor, then how they perform against other members at their rank or above their rank seems to matter. And that's why there are many different fruits in the basket, and we need to compare apples with apples and oranges with oranges. If you go to some of the top competitor academy gyms where the competition room is breeding champions and people are going there for the purpose of becoming a champion, you can probably expect that their belts are going to be tougher than the belts at sort of a hobby gym, or even maybe a gym that's just has a different. The students have a different emphasis. They have families. They have kids. They're not. Their goal in life is not to be a world champion on the highest level with the highest organization. So if your student is in your gym and they express to you, "Sir, I want to be a champion," then you do a disservice to them even if they have the technique, even if they have the time and grade, even if they have sort of the knowledge base, they're not performing against, they're not able to survive against roles against their peers or people that are a little bit underneath them. So I think it does matter to be able to defend your belt if defending your belt is what you have to do. But I don't think it's a necessary requirement to be able to survive every role with the next belt down. So if you're a white belt, you need to be beating all the white belts before you get to a blue belt, or to get a purple belt, you need to be beating all the whites and the blue belts to get your purple belt. I don't think that that's necessary, and I think that would be a daunting critique on the martial art, given that we aren't really. If you're training jiu-jitsu for self-defense, then you're not training jiu-jitsu to fight jiu-jitsu fighters. You're training jiu-jitsu to fight thugs or people, bullies, or whatever you're training to fight them for. If you're training jiu-jitsu for sport, but you're not going to be a competitor, you're just trying to get good at a sport, then you're not training to you're just training to be the best you can be, and so your belt is your belt. And age and time and responsibilities in life, all of those can be factors that weigh into it. And to say, if you get beat by 1, 2, or 3 people who are a belt lower than you, so you can't get promoted to that belt, you could lock somebody into a belt for life because of their I don't know, maybe their responsibilities, their jobs, their family, or whatever, and then that discourages them and doesn't help them promote the art, even though they may be quality instructors or quality people or great leaders or motivators or something like that. So I think it kind of depends upon the student. Now, I do think as you go up the ranks, there's going to be a point where you should not be getting caught in silly things or common things from certain grades lower than you. Now, does that mean you're not ever going to get caught? No. I think if you're training your training partners correctly, and if you're playing the boundaries of your abilities, you should be getting caught sometimes. Even as a first-degree black belt, if I'm training with a blue belt and I'm actually training to try to get better, I can't just play my A game on a blue belt because I'm not going to really get that much better. I know their timing. I know what they're thinking. I know what I'm going to be able to do. But I may need to go deep within a mistake. I may need to let my arm be a long way from my body and explore how to get out of that. And if I'm late, I'm going to get beat. And does that mean I need to take a stripe off my black belt or move myself down to brown belt or move myself to purple? No. I mean, it's all part of jiu-jitsu. But it would be odd for me to be a first-degree black belt and, having 18 plus years of jiu-jitsu and having somebody come in and being healthy, that also being there, and then have somebody who's done jiu-jitsu for 2 years just annihilate me or beat me repeatedly with a basic technique that I should know the defenses to. So there's a lot of factors that go into whether and how a person should be able to defend your belt. Blue belt is the toughest belt for jiu-jitsu people because by the time you're a blue belt, you've done jiu-jitsu long enough that probably your peer group outside of jiu-jitsu knows that you train jiu-jitsu. You're starting to have confidence with your jiu-jitsu, and you're most likely to be tested by people who want to feel your jiu-jitsu but don't want to come to class and do it. So your family reunions, you're going to end up wrestling with your jerky cousin who wants to see how tough you are. I use this saying a lot at my classes and seminars. I say, I doubt anybody in this room is ever going to need jiu-jitsu for self-defense. I mean, most of you are not going to get in a fight. And most likely, if you do get in a situation where you're going to need to do jiu-jitsu, it's going to be at a family reunion because you're going to be tested. But because we're martial artists, we're by a certain point, jiu-jitsu so well that you're going to look at a potential altercation and say it's not worth it. I don't want to hurt this guy that bad.
That's funny. The family reunion self-defense situation. It's.
I speak from experience.
We'll leave that one alone for now. Maybe talk about that one in the future. Tim, how many intangibles come into play when you're thinking about promoting someone to blue belt? Something like, are they a good teammate? Are they putting up a good effort? How's their attitude? Are they helping others? How do these come into play when promoting someone to blue?
For me, I can only speak for me. There's a lot to that. There's a lot to the intangibles. I've been fortunate. Whenever I've run a gym, I've either had another full-time job that pays the bills, or my gym was so successful that I didn't feel any sort of pressure to promote somebody to keep them as a student. So, other people I know, other instructors I know, other gym owners I know, sometimes struggle with that. They're afraid of losing students if they don't do promotions on a regular basis or something. But I've never had that pressure because I've always been able to support myself independent of promoting people. So with that, I've been able to demand a high-quality individual to be promoted. So what I'm looking for is I am looking for leaders. I'm looking, before I, and it's one of the qualities as I stripe guys up on a white belt, these are the things I'm looking for. The first couple stripes are persistence, perseverance. They keep coming. They're starting to use jiu-jitsu. They're breaking habits that I've asked them to break. They're listening to instruction. They're using technique when they roll. A two-stripe white belt in my system still going to be getting beat up, still going to be getting thrown around, still going to be getting, the raw end of the deal or being the nail more than the hammer, but they're progressing. And then the second or the third and the fourth stripe, the second set of stripes that go on the white belt are about how is this person engaging their training partners? How are they adopting technique? What is their weapon selection? How is their weapon selection looking? How hungry are they? Are they really catching the jiu-jitsu bug, or are they using jiu-jitsu as fitness? And so I'm watching as a person comes up in my system. I'm watching them for those qualities, And by the time I'm telling them that they're ready for the pre-test for jiu-jitsu, there's probably been a new student walk in, and I've observed this person help them without me coaxing or cajoling or coordinating it on. They've done it on their own. So I am looking for leaders. I am looking for people that when they go someplace and say, hey, I got my blue belt from Tim Sledd, that I would like for the common thought to be, oh, this guy's going to have a really good idea of how these moves work. He's going to be a good person. She's going to be able to execute these techniques well. She's going to be trustworthy. He's going to be able to. He's just going to be a genuine good person. And to date, I've never promoted anybody to blue that wasn't that. And it's the same sort of thing. As my hope is that everybody I promote to blue stays in the game forever. Now, that hasn't always been the case. The blue belt curse occurs, but what I'm doing is I'm priming all of them for what one of my purple belt requirements is that before I'll allow somebody to be promoted to purple belt, I want to know that they are in it for the long haul. And to date, I believe my purple belt percentage is 100% are still training. They're either black belts, brown belts, or purple belts still. And, I know they're in it for the long haul. They've caught the bug. They are invested in their progress to black belt and beyond. And so blue belt, I'm still priming them for that. I'm trying to educate them that that jiu-jitsu isn't about blue belt, that I'm not building blue belts, I'm building black belts, and it's just one of the graduations.
Tim, as a bit of a follow-up to this one, all the people that you're promoting to blue belts seem to be good, well-rounded people off and on the mat. So if somebody is coming to class, they're more there for themselves, they don't really socialize, they don't really, they come in, they train jiu-jitsu, and they don't go any extra. Would it take them a little bit longer to be getting that blue belt, or are you just kind of weeding out the ones that are actually having negative traits?
No, it would take them longer, and it would probably take me doing some coaching with them on why it's taking them longer. I tell all the students that come in, I tell them that, look, jiu-jitsu is a long, tough haul where your ego is going to be smashed, rebuilt, smashed again, rebuilt, and you're going to find, despite it being an individual martial art, an individual sport, so to speak, you're going to find that the strength is in numbers. And so when somebody comes in, honestly, I don't care if they can kill every purple belt in the room. If they're not if they're not showing good behavior, following the rules, taking care of their teammates, just if there's something about it, if they're out doing stuff they shouldn't be doing outside of the gym, and I find out about it, usually that means they get kicked off the team. But maybe it's something that's not so bad, but it's still kind of shady, or just sort of disrespectful or whatever. Sometimes it's as much as posting weird stuff on Facebook that is disrespectful or doesn't speak well to their character. Then I'll have a conversation with them and say, this is, one of the things I expect from my blue belts is X, and I expect you to be I don't expect you not to be hurting people. You're a fantastic athlete. You're tough. You did 22 years of garage wrestling and back barn MMA. You're tough. Good for you. But to be a blue belt under my system, you got to be tough, technical, and a good person. So you're tough. I'm going to make you technical, but to get a blue belt, you gotta start doing the right thing.
Okay, thanks for sharing that insight into what's going on there with your blue belts. Tim, have you ever regretted giving somebody a blue belt?
No, I've never regretted any blue belt that I've handed out because I do so much to get ready for that process. I've had people that frustrated me because I gave them the blue belt and then they either quit or bounced to a different place and used my name to sort of support their progress in in a different either town or gym or something like that, and that frustrated me. But that's on me. I don't regret any belt that I've handed out because they've all gone through a process and a grading and a team evaluation, because my students are also involved in those pre-tests, and I have all of the upper belts fill out an evaluation of the person and give critique after that pre-test. And I was good about it early on and haven't been so good about it in the last couple of years, but I would give the evaluations to the test takers, and then they'd be able to know what they needed to work on. So usually it's been a peer approval process, not just from me.
What advice do you have for the new blue belt?
So for a new blue belt, protect your neck, keep your elbows close, fight grips, and realize that now that you've got that new blue belt on your back, all the white belts that have been white belts for a while are going to be testing themselves on you. So don't take it to heart. Don't get frustrated. Don't focus on wins and losses. Focus on what you've just done. You've just achieved the first graduation of many in jiu-jitsu, and there's a lot more to learn, and there's a lot more time that you're going to be a nail. Blue belt, in my opinion, is one of the toughest belts in jiu-jitsu because, in that rank, in that division, you have people that just walked out of a white belt, and then in that rank, you have people that are overdue for a purple belt. And a purple belt, in my program and all the programs that I've come up under, a purple belt is an elite belt. These are people that know jiu-jitsu. Back in 2005, Master Kaiki told me that the only difference between a purple belt and a black belt is strategy, tightness, and timing. And, so you're dealing with, somebody who's basically just walked out of a beginner belt, entering into a division where there could be somebody that's essentially got the skill set of a black belt if that person knew how to use those skills appropriately. So it can be really tough. A blue belt in a gym can often start getting the big fish in a small pond mentality, but that's why open mats and cross training and having good coaches is important, because that you got to realize there's going to be a lot of people that are bigger and badder. So my advice to a blue belt is stay the course, stay invested. Don't put a time frame on the next graduation. Instead, really work on the next process. In different schools, the next process is different things. But new blue belts in my system, they just need to keep working on developing the complexity of their systems, because I'm a systems coach. So, we work many different systems, and I expect the blue belts to be able to execute the techniques and understand the techniques and the history of the systems. But by purple belt, they need to be flowing through the systems and linking the systems together. So that should be their focus.
Could you maybe jump in a little bit deeper about what you mean by developing the complexity of their systems?
Sure. I'm going to build a system off the top of my head. Let's say you're in the closed guard. You have a hand on the elbow and a hand in the cross lapel. You reach up to take a cross collar choke, and the person defends the cross collar choke. So you move from that to a scissor sweep, because the person was defending the cross collar choke. Their hands are up around their neck, protecting them. You've swept them. You're now in the mount position, and you then work to either address the hands that were protecting their neck with either an armbar from the mount, or if they're defending in a different way, you can attack to Americana. Well, that's a very basic system of attacks that link from being in a bad position, the bottom, to a positive position on the top, to a submission. And it's a very simple. It's a gi system, but you can make it into a no gi system if you just use, instead of using the the lapels for the choke. You use control of the back of the head, or maybe even a guillotine to sort of get the same reaction from the person on top. But it's a very basic system, all simple jiu-jitsu techniques. And then what you want to do is you want to add complexity to that. You can add complexity to the end, so that once you get to the mounted position, instead you're rolling the person and taking their back instead of doing the arm lock as an option, or you're attacking the Americana. They reach up and defend, and then so you start to link 1, 2, 3s to each little step. So your system can become the tree of options from each position or technique can grow more complex. Even if it's all basic, it can become more complex. And that's really, when I look at high quality jiu-jitsu practitioners, the guys that when I train with them, it's like, man, they're not beating me with, magic wands and fairy dust. They're beating me with jiu-jitsu. How are they beating me with jiu-jitsu? And it's that they get me in a place where they've got 4 moves, I've got 1, and if I make the wrong move, I either get tapped, or if I make a different move, then I open up 5 options for them to attack me. So it just consistently gets worse and worse and worse for me. But it's all jiu-jitsu. It's all basic jiu-jitsu. It's just a matter of how did they organize their systems to draw me into a point where I couldn't defend anymore. I was rolling with JT Torres when he came to Indiana this summer, and he and I had a great match. He slaughtered me, tapped me, and he didn't use anything outside of my blue belt minimum requirement jiu-jitsu. It was all basic jiu-jitsu. And so you say, well, you're a first-degree black belt. How does a guy who, how does a guy like JT beat me with that? I should be able to defend all of those techniques because I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 18 years. Well, the way he did it was he had me defending in one way, one system, while he was operating off of a chain of another system. And I couldn't keep up. He got ahead, and so I had to submit. And that's what we're doing in jiu-jitsu. Is that you should always be honing your technique, but also honing it within the sort of organized patterns or which is what I call organized patterns or systems that make them function at a high degree of success. And so a blue belt, you can't expect a blue belt to have, a very complex system of attack. They may have a very effective system of attack. They may be doing knee slice pass from an open guard into 100 kilos into Ezekiel choke. 1, 2, 3. I mean, and I know some great big blue belts that will knee slice pass, hug the head, hug the arm, and then stuff a sleeve and then stuff their hand under your chin and choke you with an Ezekiel. That's highly effective, very, very effective technique and system, but it's not very complex. And if any one of those components gets thwarted, a blue belt's going to have to stop and think and kind of stutter around and try to figure out what to do next. Whereas a purple belt, brown belt, black belt is likely going to, as they're feeling the defense enter into place, they're going to operate off of option 2, option 3. And I think that's what we're doing in jiu-jitsu as we mature, is we're looking to increase the complexity of our attacks, not in the sense of complex techniques, but in the sense of being able to link effective techniques together in more ways so that we get ahead of our opponent and submit them.
What's the difference between that and somebody being at such a high level to where the first technique or the first pathway down these road techniques works pretty much every time? Somebody I know is going to armbar me or leg drag me. They're not going to have to go to plan B or C. It's just going to work that first time. Are they just addressing these things that I'm defending at an earlier level and able to progress that way, or what's going on there?
Well, the person that I think of is, Hadja Gracie and his Mount Cross choke. It's legendary at this point that, I forget what world championship it was, but basically he did the exact same thing to everybody through the division, and just mounted cross choked everybody. And I remember sitting back thinking, why didn't they defend it? How did they do it? And there's just so. I think there's a certain degree of proficiency with any of the fundamental techniques that you can get. That as long as you get the technique started before the defense can get put into place, it's going to be difficult to defend, especially if the person has a certain type of attributes. Take, for example, the triangle choke. The triangle choke is a very, very simple choke to defend if you can get even a small amount of defense started early in the process. And by defense, I mean posturing. If you notice you're making the arm in, arm out mistake, and you thrust your chest forward, lift your head high, you stand a very strong chance of surviving the triangle choke. But if somebody's really savvy at delivering the triangle, they've got such a control on your head and shoulder that by the time you realize you've made the arm in, arm out mistake, your head is plastered to their belly, and they're crossing their legs with ease around your neck and arm so that you're hung up. And the ability to get that proficient at that technique and to also understand how to make the entry such that the amount of defense that can occur is minimized, that takes a lot of practice and repetition. And Ryan Hall, who is somebody who I admire greatly in the jiu-jitsu world, and I've been a fan of his since he was Dr. Ryangle, triangling everybody in tournaments all over the country. When I met with him and asked him at one point in time, what it took for him to get so good at triangles and why he chose triangle versus anything else. And, at that point in his career, he said that his goal was, I knew I needed to get good and really good at every technique if I wanted to be a black belt. So I just chose to get really good at a technique that worked for me to a point where I was catching everybody with it, but I also fell behind in getting good at some other techniques, and so I had to play catch-up. But his point was he knew he needed to be razor sharp at all of jiu-jitsu, so why not get razor sharp at this technique first? And he did. He just trained it to the point where, at a purple belt level, he was triangling browns and black belts, seasoned black belts in, like Nagas and Grappler's Quests, and lots of videos out there of him doing that, and with ease. And it was just because he knew the entries. He had drilled the entries to the point where he was entering into it before you even knew you needed to defend it. And that is a technique that if you don't get your defense started early, you're going to suffer. If you get the defense started early, get your chest forward, head up, and so they can't cross their legs in a figure four, you're going to survive. But if you start in a triangle, you start defending a triangle where you've made the arm in, arm out mistake, the person has the legs figure forward, and maybe even they have their hands on the back of your head and they're pulling down, and now you have to start to defend, it's very difficult to defend. So different moves have different openings. I always say there's no such thing as a perfect move in jiu-jitsu. There's a way into and out of every technique. That's true up to a given point. And then there's the point at which you're going to have to tap.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much for sharing some insight on what it takes to be a blue belt and some thoughts on that.
I really appreciate you having me on your show. I love your show, and I'm always glad to come on and help out.
I hope you enjoyed the interview about blue belts with Tim Sledd. I interviewed 5 other coaches and asked them the same questions about blue belts. You can find links below. We have Matt Thornton, Bernardo Faria, Dan Koval, Henry Akins, and John Will. Check those interviews out. I'm sure you'll enjoy them if you enjoyed this interview. I hope you liked the video. Comment down below and subscribe to the channel to check out much more stuff about jiu-jitsu. So thank you for stopping by. We'll catch you next time.